From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. And it's certainly very quirky this week. We'll get to that later. I'm Charu Sharma for Akashvani. I'm in Mumbai today. Not the place to be, I assure you, with the monsoon upon us. It's very wet, it's overcast, and of course, muggy as well. However, I had a little bit of work here. And of course, it is the financial capital, so there's plenty to do. Plenty to say in terms of cricket as well. We'll save that for a little later in the show.
It's Jim Maxwell. I'm here at Headingley, Jonny Bairstow's home ground. That might be significant over the next 5 days in terms of the relationship between the crowd and the players, particularly the Australian players. But it's all quiet on the Headingley front at the moment, and we're getting ready for the toss and the rest of it, and see what drama we get for the third test of what has so far been one of the most extraordinary, exciting series for the Ashes that we've ever seen.
I'm Nikesh Rughani here in Leicester in the English Midlands for the BBC. Nice and sunny here at the moment. Wimbledon has actually just started a couple of days ago down the road, 100 miles away from where I am. And despite that, the height of the English summer, all the talk is about the Ashes, all the controversy, Bazball, all that kind of stuff. So much hype around this series between England and Australia, which is great to see. And Jim, I remember seeing you at the Oval a couple of weeks ago. Seems like an age ago, doesn't it, for the World Test Championship? A lot has happened since then.
Nikesh, good to have you on the show, and I hope there's better weather in England for the cricket and for the tennis, unlike here in Mumbai. But of course, we need to talk about the Ashes. As you said, Jim, very exciting. I wonder if you've used that term if Australia had been 2-0 down. But it has been a terrific series, without question. Let's begin with mention of a little bit of heartbreak, as it were, because for the first time ever in the ICC Men's ODI World Cup, the West Indies will be missing. Sounds ridiculous, but it's actually true. Two-time World Cup winners needed to win all three of the remaining qualifiers in Zimbabwe, but first lost to Scotland, and with that went their hope of making it to India later in October for the ODI World Cup. Jim, you know, we've been talking about West Indies so often here on Stumped, and of course, it's a global topic, but what's your thought? Because, you know, I did the West Indies UAE series in the UAE before they went for the qualifiers in Zimbabwe, and we were all talking about, oh, it's going to be easy peasy for you, surely. And the West Indies were actually a little worried, and they said, well, no, we'll see how it goes. This is unprecedented.
It is, and it's very sad, given the history, of course, of the West Indies were triumphant for 15 years in any old form of the game, with the Viv Richards and the fast bowlers, Malcolm Marshall and Garner and Ambrose. What extraordinary players they had. They don't seem to be producing those players, and I just wonder if the whole notion of the West Indies is really falling apart. It's only ever existed as a cricket nation, not as a political or economic organisation. So perhaps the various islands are becoming more independent in the way they go about their business. Certainly, the quality of leadership or the lack of it is a big issue, as we've seen for a while in West Indies cricket. Some are saying the ICC should pump more money into the West Indies to try and help them, but it is very disappointing. It's quite alarming, particularly where I sit, because we've got the West Indies for 2 test matches next summer, and we had them last summer, and they were awful. So I'm very, very sad to see it. But it's giving someone else an opportunity, of course. But the demise of one of the great cricketing organisations, nations, if you want to call it, is very uncomfortable for all of us who love the game.
Yeah, without question. You mentioned the political boundaries between the islands, and it didn't seem to bother them earlier, but I wonder if there's a bigger separation, and which is why they're unable to bring or get their act together as a collective. Well, yeah, I have lots to talk about the West Indies as well, but Nikesh, your thoughts on what do you think has gone wrong with them, obviously over time?
And it has been over time, absolutely, Charu. I kind of saw the end of West Indies cricket as we knew it, with the sort of retirements of Curtly Ambrose and Courtney Walsh. You could see it coming then. That was in 2000 when Curtly Ambrose retired. Walsh went on for a couple of more years. I think they were kind of saved. Their blushes were saved a little bit by the fact Brian Lara was still playing, Shivnarine Chanderbal was still playing, and they were able to still put in those good performances and beat some of the top sides on occasion, albeit not as quite as consistently as before. Then that new generation of players actually did come through. There was huge talent coming through, the likes of Chris Gale, and in limited overs cricket, you look at the Andre Russells of this world, the Karan Pollards, the Sunil Narines, so much quality on paper that they've got. Dwayne Bravo, of course, and a few others as well. But as Jim mentioned as well, they've almost become mercenaries, because we're talking around the sort of late 2000s, the early 2010s, when the IPL first came about, when T20 cricket really exploded all around the world. And they found an opportunity to make millions by not playing for the West Indies. And I don't say playing for their country as well, because I think that's a crucial point. If you're getting a choice of playing in 7 different franchise tournaments all year round, you're getting £1 million for playing in the IPL, $1 million, whatever it is, and you're getting X hundred thousands for playing in other leagues as well. You can make so much money at the expense of playing for the West Indies. And it's not like you've even got that national pride. If you're from Jamaica, if you're from Trinidad, you're not going to necessarily have that same passion to play for the West Indies, because you're not playing for the flag of your nation. So it's a little bit different to, say, an Indian or an Australian or an Englishman who would feel that sense of pride in playing for the flag. When you're playing for the flag of the West Indies, it's probably not quite that same feeling. So it's a whole mixture of things, really. But I certainly think the advent of T20 cricket and franchise cricket around the world has hindered them, and they just haven't got enough money, the West Indies Cricket Board, to compete with all these big money competitions around the world. And that is the issue, is the distribution of wealth fair? And, some would argue it is, some would argue it's not. I mean, that's a whole different debate, but they're clearly not getting enough money. They're not making enough money, the West Indies Cricket Board, and they can't compete with the likes of the IPL, the 100 now, and the Big Bash, and the Pakistan Super League, etc., etc.
Well, maybe next year's T20 World Cup will be a bonus. It's being played in the West Indies and the United States, most of the games in the West Indies. So you would hope that that will pull crowds and maybe engender the attitude towards cricket that seems to have gone. I mean, it was explained to me some years ago, after the West Indies started to lose their lustre, that cricket is no longer a way out in the West Indies. You might want to say that about other places, but because of the looseness of the whole structure in the Caribbean, people, as you suggest, they've got more mobility, they've got more money, they've got soccer. Trinidad and Jamaica both qualified for World Cups. They've got America and Canada. They can do so much else. It's a far different world to the one that Gary Sobers and the 3Ws grew up in the 50s. So I think that's added to the problems they've got. And cricket's just not the focus that it used to be. And as I say, perhaps somehow we can get them motivated next year through the agency of the T20, but that's problematic.
Finally on Stumped. The third test of the Ashes is underway at Headingley, but the controversy of the second test does continue to linger. With England chasing down Australia's second innings total, Jonny Bairstow thought the over was finished, and after ducking a ball from Cameron Green, walked down for a chat with his partner Ben Stokes at the other end. As he left his crease, wicketkeeper Alex Carey had another thought or two, and he chucked the ball at the stumps. It hit the stumps, and Bairstow eventually was declared out. England went on to lose by just 43 runs, another narrow loss. Of course, they now trail Australia 2-0. Jim, you were there at Lord's watching all of this in real time. Your thoughts?
Well, it was pretty obvious that he was out in terms of the laws of the game. It's just a question of the spirit of the game. And some petrol's been tipped on this particular line by Rishi Sunak, the English Prime Minister, who's said that it's not in the spirit of the game. And, of course, they're all opportunistic, these politicians, and the Australian Prime Minister jumped on it straight away and said, oh, the Australians played very well. I'm very happy with the way they're playing their cricket, and it's a reminder to all of you who are batsmen that you must stay in your crease. So there's been a bit flying around in that regard. In fact, if you wanted say this is a diplomatic incident, which Rishi Sunak is trying to say it isn't, well, he's made it one. For what it's worth, it'll pass. But the Prime Ministers today have been more in the teeth of this Ashes controversy than they were in 1932 when the British Prime Minister, I think it was Stanley Baldwin, and then Joe Lyons came in over the telegram that was sent from the Australian Cricket Board to England, objecting to the standard of sportsmanship with Bodyline. And Joe Lyons simply said to the board, calm down, just calm down. So there have been more about in the last few days than 90 years ago. And coming into a test match where Jonny Bairstow will be playing on his home ground, I can only imagine that it might be a little raucous. It could become incendiary out there on the terraces. Oh, it's all adding some flavour, delicious flavour to the rest of their series. And as you say, Australia lead 2-0, but they could easily have lost both games. And we forget what Ben Stokes did. And it was triggered to a large extent by that dismissal. That got his blood running, and he carved up the Australians for the next hour. Most extraordinary innings, and damn near pulled the game out anyway. So we have had some unpredictable, spectacular cricket in this series, and this incident will continue as much as Pat Cummins is playing a very straight bat and said, we just play within the laws, we get on with the game. So let's see what happens here at Headingley.
Well, there are many scrumptious things to bite into, but just before we get to you, Nikesh, and of course that's Stokes' innings, Jim, I will ask you, you might remember the rather, well, now famous, you can't call it infamous, case where the Indians went into the dressing room having run out Bell, and then they took their appeal back, and when the play resumed after the break, Bell was back, which was quite a major coup, really, of diplomacy and everything else in the dressing rooms. Do you think that, considering Bairstow wasn't really going for a run, which is pretty obvious, there was scope for Australia to actually take that appeal back, in your opinion?
Well, there was, but unfortunately there's a chain of events with Bairstow having left his ground on a few occasions, and also in other moments in this series having that toss at the stumps himself. So I think they sort of got to a point, well, if he's going to wander out of his ground, we'll just test him a bit here. And there were 2 seconds in it, really. The umpire was about to say over, if they ever say that anymore anyway. And Bairstow started to wander after putting his bat down and then going to the non-strikers end to have a chat. And the ball was on its way as he went. So, we got these seconds. Really, if the timing had been a little bit different, it would have been dead ball, all over. Pat Cummins could have made friends in a lot of places by saying we're going to give you a warning and turn it over and have you come back. But cricket doesn't seem to be played in that manner anymore. It's becoming more combative, and the Australians were quite right to see off a dozy batsman, as everyone has described Bairstow, for being careless.
Well, he's certainly going to be less dozy in his home ground, but there's so much more we can talk about this. But let's move on, though, to, let me get back to one of the words you mentioned, which is important for me, warning. Now, perhaps there's still scope in cricket, despite all the rules, because of the spirit of the game, to give a batsman a warning, as they could at the non-strikers' end as well. Just a warning. I think Courtney Walsh once stopped right short of the wickets at the non-strikers' end and poised to take the bails off, but gave the batsman a warning, which was well taken. But
Mitchell Starc too. Yeah, he's done that recently. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nikesh, if we move on to that spectacular 155 that once again almost won the game for England, as, of course, they almost won the first test as well. The world will not stop talking about how magnificent that innings was by the English captain.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And, for a moment, especially when he was batting with Jonny Bairstow, but even during that partnership with Stuart Broad as well, just the aura that Ben Stokes had. He's obviously got great memories, not only against Australia in the Ashes, you talk about Headingley 2019, but that same summer on that ground in white ball cricket in the World Cup final as well. leading England to that, I suppose, victory on paper, as they call it, becoming world champions, and tying that game with New Zealand after the Super Over. What an effort that was. And he was in that same zone as well, that sort of glazed look over his eyes as well, just that pure focus and the ease at which he was playing some of those cricket shots as well, seeing the ball like an absolute football, just hitting it into areas wherever he wanted to. The same delivery, he could pull it out towards deep mid-wicket, he could give himself some room, he could cut it through the offside as well, just toying with the fielders as well, and superhuman effort. But, once he was gone, it was all over. It was kind of all boiling up to that really tense finish, and in the end, England falling a fair bit short than they would have liked, really. But Ben Stokes, what a player, what a captain, and the man for the big occasion, really. You look at his overall record in across Test cricket and in white ball cricket as well. It's okay, it's decent. He's got decent numbers as well. Not world-class numbers by any stretch of the imagination, but when that big moment arrives, not only as a leader, but also as a batter, as a bowler as well, in sort of breaking those crucial partnerships and things. He is always there for those big moments, and England will hope that he fires a few more times in the remainder of this Ashes series as well.
Let's also move on to mentioning one of the greats, if I can use that term, in cricket, because Steve Smith, currently taking part in his 100th Test match for Australia, has reached 9,000 Test runs in 2 games fewer than Brian Lara. And look at the esteem we hold Brian Lara in. So Steve is right up there, averaging just under 60 a match, which is phenomenal. Jim, how do you sum him up? We know he has these wonderful quirks, but still a very hard man to out.
Well, he has an insatiable appetite for batting. I think he's still batting when he's sleeping. They reckon he sleeps with his cricket bat, or one of them. The thing about Smith, he's certainly a quirky player. He has a lot of mannerisms, but like all good batsmen, he has a magnificent hand-eye coordination. And as we saw with Viv Richards when he got to the end of his career, as soon as you lose that little bit of extra, you're in trouble. I don't think Smith's at that point, but what we are looking at, if I think about all the players I've ever seen play, and I never saw Bradman, that was before my time, but I have seen footage of Bradman, and Smith's pretty close to him in the way he plays. He manipulates the ball, right? He manoeuvres it through the field. That's what Bradman did so brilliantly, apart from jumping on short stuff and pounding it. Smith is able to just knock the ball here, there and everywhere, play very sedately, build, and we've seen in T20 when he's turned his mind to it that he can demolish bowling, and occasionally that's happened in Test matches. But his appetite for the game, for runs, you see it in everything he does, in the field or batting, and I'm not looking forward really to the day he retires, because I have a feeling by the end of the next Ashes tour in Australia, he may well decide he's had enough.
Well, Smith too is coming up in Labuschagne, so, those quirks will remain. But Nikesh, sometimes he does things which are pretty obvious by moving well outside the off stump and manipulating it to a leg and all the rest of the things that you can actually see and analyze. And yet, your thoughts on why he continues to score big and people can't really get the better of those idiosyncrasies that he has on the crease?
Well, you look at, Jim mentioned Don Bradman, and the fact Bradman moves around in his crease so much and manipulates, like Jim said, and finds those gaps. And Smith has done something very similar. You say moving over to the off and flicking to leg, but most batters would be looking to drive through the off to those balls. And I think that is the difference. His hand-eye coordination is so good. It doesn't always look pretty, but he knows exactly what he's doing. You look at his cover drive as well. Statistically, you look at just aesthetically, Babar Azam and Virat Kohli, you say at the moment, have got the best cover drives in world cricket. Well, actually, according to CricViz and all the stats, Smith is a much more successful cover driver than anybody else in the world. His numbers are off the chart. We use the word great quite often. He will go down, when he finishes his career, people might not appreciate it right now, as one of the very best to ever pick up a bat in Test cricket. And 9,000 runs at an average of 60, you can't argue with that.
No question about that. Jim, I hope you're wrong about next year because it looks like he has a lot of years still. That's about all we have on Stumped. Thanks to Jim Maxwell for this week, and of course for Nikesh Rughani for joining us. Nikesh, thank you so much. And all of you, do join us again next time. But till then, it's goodbye.